I remember the first time I had asked my mother, Mama, when are we going home? Because I was about 4, and I had never seen the snow outside those plane doors before. And it felt like I was gone for way too long from those sunny little islands where the sun had shone. So, Mama, tell me, when are we going home? And I remember how she leaned in and she said, You were born in Canada. We are home. And even right then, I could see through that last little lie that she was asking herself, why, oh why would I let a strange man take me for a bride and up and down this 14, 15-hour plane ride to a place where the land, the people, the snow, and the language were oh so very white. But in a way, she was right. This wasn't her home. It was mine. I remember the first time I refused to answer her in her native tongue and how she would proudly speak it and I would run. And all of a sudden, that hurt. It just left her stunned. The realization that he doesn't need to sound like me, his mom. He doesn't need to be like me, my only son. I remember how I would always put the blame on her, ask if this was a game to her, ask her why I would have to keep explaining to her that I wasn't craving her home-cooked Filipino food for lunch because I don't want the other kids at school to think I'm weird, Mom. Okay, son, she would murmur, as if my words just didn't hurt her. As if her decision to come here for the betterment of her kids, her family, her future, her everything, didn't always mean the world to her. But okay, son, she would murmur. I remember the blue-black swelling underneath my mom's eye from this one time when I was 5 and I had woken up in the middle of the night to a scream and fright, so I could see my daddy kneeling by my mother's side, just crying and just begging her to tell him what to do so that he could finally make things right. Go to sleep, Bryan, as they yelled from across the room as my Nintendo Entertainment System crashed into the wall into a million different parts and tubes, leaving young me to walk back down that long hallway to assume that what I had just seen was probably just another one of my nightmares. Later on, I had realized that I probably stared back at them down that long hallway with those same eyes that everybody told me my daddy had too. I remember cuddling with my mother in the separate spare room, asking her when and if I could get my games back soon because I loved playing with her more than the sun loved the moon. Just like in those storybooks she used to read to me every weekday afternoon before we would watch cartoons. And I had later learned that she read me those books and she watched those TV shows with me so that she can learn how to read and write and speak English too. But those aren't things one really assumes through the innocence of their youth. I remember my mother's belongings slowly making their way back upstairs. She had convinced herself that she didn't care, that what happened in the past was the past, and all that mattered was that we were there, because when we were all together, according to her, she was home. I remember my mother forgiving my father for transgressions that he had had, for things that I was too young, too stupid, too selfish, too self-absorbed to ever really understand what it was her and my father had really had, because They just came from a place where they had to make things work, no matter how happy or how sad. I remember how we had to watch my father die together, and how she crumpled and collapsed on that cold concrete of the hospital floor, and I stared across at this man as he laid down, grasping for more air in his lungs, more time with his wife, as it all flashed before him, his sons, his daughters, his entire life. And as I could feel my mother's sobs stabbing softly through the air like a knife, it was then, and only then, that I had to know what love is. Love is what brought my mother from one land to the next. It affected her, it dissected her, it guilted my father into a mess for her, until ultimately he had to do what was right, and he found the courage to do what was best for her. And that was to die. I remember how my mother eventually moved on with grace and dignity. She came home from that citizenship ceremony, proudly proclaiming that she had fulfilled and finished her vows of holy matrimony to create 5 total Canadians, all in one family. 5 Canadians of the utmost of citizenry. And so I stand before you today, the progeny of a goddess, of a queen, an entire village of roses that had the courage to blossom from concrete. And I stand before you today as Bryan Francisco because I remember thee.